The morning sun crept through the cracked windows of a small auto repair shop in San Esperanza, a dusty town where everyone knew each other's name, but few had anything left to give. Inside, a young mechanic named Mateo Vargas wiped the grease from his hands and exhaled tiredly. The smell of oil, metal, and coffee clung to the air. Mateo wasn't rich, far from it, but he was known for something rare, his kindness. If a customer was short on cash, he'd quietly say, "Pay me when you can." If an old man's truck broke down on the road, he'd show up, even if it meant skipping dinner. He worked at Rivas Auto Repairs, a small family-run garage managed by Senor Rivas, a strict but practical man who cared more about business than about stories of compassion. That morning, as Mateo worked under a faded blue pickup, he heard the squeal of brakes outside. A small, old-fashioned car sputtered to a stop at the entrance. Out stepped an elderly woman, frail, with silver hair tucked beneath a sun hat. She looked lost, her eyes darting nervously between the road and the broken front of her car. "Señorita," Mateo greeted softly, wiping his hands on his rag. "What seems to be the trouble?" She sighed shakily. "My car stopped halfway up the hill, and I just managed to roll it here. I don't have much money, son, but I can." Mateo raised a hand kindly. "Don't worry about that right now. Let's take a look first." He pushed her car into the shop himself, though it took nearly all his strength. Within minutes, he was under the hood, adjusting, checking, testing. The woman, Dona Teresa, stood nearby, wringing her hands nervously. After about half an hour, he smiled. "You're lucky, ma'am. Just a loose fuel line and a dead spark plug. I had some spares lying around." She looked at him, surprised. "How much do I owe you?" He shook his head. "Nothing. Consider it a small favor." Tears welled in her eyes. "But you worked so hard." He smiled again. "I'd want someone to do the same for my mother." The old woman covered her mouth, touched by his words. Then, she quietly reached into her purse and took out an old rosary. "Take this," she insisted. "It belonged to my husband. It's all I can give." Mateo hesitated, then accepted it gently. "I'll keep it safe, Dona Teresa. I promise." She thanked him again, her voice trembling with emotion, and slowly drove away. Mateo didn't know it then, but that simple act of kindness would soon change everything. That afternoon, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Senor Rivas stormed into the workshop, waving a clipboard angrily. "Mateo, did you repair that old woman's car without charging her?" Mateo froze. "She couldn't afford it, senor. It was a simple fix. A simple fix that used parts that cost money." Rivas interrupted. "This is a business, not a charity." "With all due respect, sir," Mateo said quietly, "sometimes kindness is worth more than a receipt." Rivas's face hardened. "Kindness doesn't pay rent. You think I can keep this shop open with good intentions?" There was a long silence. The other mechanics stopped working, glancing nervously between them. Finally, Rivas threw down the clipboard. "Pack your tools, Mateo. You're done here." The words hit him like a hammer. "Fired," he whispered. "Because I helped someone?" Rivas crossed his arms. "Because you don't follow rules. Maybe next time you'll learn to put work before pity." That night, Mateo walked home under the flickering streetlights, his worn boots echoing against the pavement. The rosary hung around his neck, catching the moonlight. His heart ached. Not for losing the job, but for realizing how little compassion the world seemed to have left. His small apartment felt emptier than usual. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his calloused hands, whispering, Maybe I was wrong to care so much." But deep down, a quiet voice whispered back, "No, you did the right thing." The next few days were hard. No job meant no income. Bills piled up. He sold his old bicycle just to buy groceries. But every time doubt crept in, he'd feel the rosary around his neck, and somehow it gave him peace. One afternoon, while Mateo stood in line at a small bakery, he noticed something strange. A sleek black car stopped outside. Two men in suits stepped out, scanning the street as if searching for someone. "Excuse me?" one of them asked the shopkeeper, "Do you know a man named Mateo Vargas?" Mateo froze mid-step. "That's me," he said cautiously. The men exchanged a glance. "Sir, we've been asked to escort you. Someone would like to meet you." Mateo frowned. "Who?" They smiled politely. "You'll see." His first instinct was suspicion, but something in their calm, respectful tone made him follow. They drove for nearly half an hour, leaving the dusty edges of San Esperanza behind, until they reached a gated estate surrounded by gardens and fountains. Mateo blinked in disbelief. "Are you sure this isn't a mistake?" he murmured. "No mistake, Señor Vargas," one replied. "Please, come inside." The house was breathtaking. Marble floors, chandeliers, the faint scent of roses. A maid led him into a sunlit room where a figure sat by the window. It was Dona Teresa, but she didn't look like the frail old woman he remembered. Dressed in elegant linen, her posture regal, she smiled as he entered. "Mateo," she said softly, "I've been looking for you." He stood frozen, utterly confused. "Dona Teresa? You live here?" She chuckled gently. "Yes, my full name is Teresa Montiel de Rebleda. My late husband founded the Rebleda Foundation, one of the largest in the country." Mateo's jaw dropped. I didn't know." She smiled kindly. "Of course you didn't. You saw an old woman with a broken car. You didn't see money, or titles, or opportunity. You saw a person." He swallowed hard, unable to speak. "I wanted to thank you properly," she continued, her eyes warm. "Not just with words, but with something that can change your life, and the lives of many others." Mateo's heart began to race. Mateo sat stiffly on the velvet couch, his hands folded nervously as Dona Teresa Montiel de Rebleda smiled at him from across the grand sitting room. The golden afternoon light poured through the windows, casting long shadows over antique furniture and portraits of generations past. He still couldn't believe what was happening. 3 days ago, he was an unemployed mechanic eating canned soup for dinner. Now, he was sitting in a mansion that looked like something out of a dream, face to face with a woman he'd thought was just a helpless old lady on the side of the road. "Mateo," Dona Teresa said kindly, pouring him a cup of tea herself instead of letting the maid do it. "You remind me so much of my husband." He blinked. "Your husband?" "Yes," she said, smiling wistfully. "Carlos was a mechanic too, you know. Before the foundation, before the business empire, he fixed cars for free in our small town. People thought he was crazy for not charging. But he said something I've never forgotten. The world runs on engines, but hearts run on kindness." Mateo looked down, eyes stinging slightly. "That's beautiful," he murmured. She nodded. "It's why I stopped that day, Mateo. When you helped me without asking for anything, I saw him in you. And I realized, maybe it was time for me to give someone else the same chance life once gave us." She reached into a folder beside her and slid a paper toward him. It was printed with the logo of the Rebleda Foundation for Hope. "I've decided," she said softly. "I want you to work for me." Mateo's eyes widened. "Work for you? But I'm not a businessman, Dona Teresa. I'm just a mechanic." She smiled knowingly. "Exactly. The Foundation's new project is called Hands of Hope. It's a program to teach mechanical skills to young people from poor communities, to help them earn honest livings. Just like you. And I want you to run it." He froze, stunned. "Me? Run it?" "Yes, Mateo. You know what it means to struggle, to help, to care. You have what money can't buy, heart." Mateo's voice cracked. "But I don't have a degree. I don't know how to." "You'll learn," she interrupted gently. "And I'll help you. Consider this not as a job, but as a partnership." Mateo sat back, speechless. His mind raced with disbelief, gratitude, and fear all at once. Just a week ago, he'd been fired for helping her. And now she was offering him a purpose. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "There are better people out there." She smiled faintly. "Because when no one was watching, you chose kindness over convenience. That's the kind of person I trust to change lives." The following days felt surreal. Mateo was given an office at the Foundation's local branch. A modest space filled with toolboxes, plans, and the laughter of teenagers who came to learn. For the first time, he wasn't just fixing cars, he was fixing futures. He taught kids from broken homes how to handle a wrench, how to change oil, how to rebuild engines, but also how to believe in themselves. Don't ever let anyone tell you that kindness makes you weak, he'd tell them. It's the strongest thing you can carry. Every evening, Dona Teresa would stop by to watch the lessons. Sometimes, she'd just sit quietly at the back, smiling to herself as she saw hope being built one spark plug at a time. But then tragedy struck. One morning, as Mateo was preparing for class, he received a call. "Mateo," said one of the foundation staff, her voice trembling, "Dona Teresa's in the hospital. She collapsed." His chest tightened. He rushed across the city, heart pounding, until he reached the private hospital. When he entered her room, he found her pale but smiling, her frail hand resting on the same rosary she had given him. "Don't look so worried," she whispered. "Even engines need rest sometimes." He took her hand gently. "You should have told me you were sick. I didn't want you to see me like this," she said softly. "But I had one last thing to tell you." Tears pricked his eyes. "Please, don't talk like that." She smiled faintly. "Mateo, everything you're doing, it's more than I dreamed. I want you to keep it going even when I'm gone. Promise me you'll never stop helping people. Promise me you'll keep believing that kindness changes the world." He swallowed hard, nodding through tears. "I promise." Her fingers tightened around his for a moment, and then relaxed. The monitors beeped softly in the background. Mateo bowed his head, clutching her hand, whispering a prayer. Weeks later, a letter arrived at the foundation, sealed with her name. Inside, written in elegant handwriting, was her final gift. "Mateo, you have shown me that goodness is alive in this world. I have left you the tools to keep it alive. The Hands of Hope program now belongs to you. Never stop building hearts." Beneath the letter was a set of keys to the same auto shop where he had once been fired. She had bought it before she passed. And on the front gate, freshly painted, hung a new sign, Taller de Esperanza, the Workshop of Hope. That day, Mateo stood outside the shop with tears streaming down his face. He placed his hand on the sign and whispered, "Gracias, Dona Teresa. I won't let you down." Soon, the garage buzzed with laughter again. Not of angry customers or strict bosses, but of young men and women learning, growing, and finding hope through the power of compassion. Mateo taught them not just to fix cars, but to fix hearts. To believe that every small act of goodness ripples outward in ways you can never predict. He often thought back to that single moment, when he tightened a loose fuel line for an old woman who couldn't pay. One small decision, one simple act of kindness, and it had changed everything. That night, as the stars blanketed San Esperanza, Mateo closed the shop, looked up at the sky, and smiled. The world, he thought, runs on engines, but hearts run on kindness.